what if funders actually sent up their own central server where all the data that related to projects that they fund are stored, and all the analysis is also done on this server? Yeah, and the benefit here is, by default, when you publish a study, your data automatically becomes open. Welcome to Everything Hurts. My name is Dan Quintana from the University of Oslo, and I'm here with James Heathers from Cypher Skin. James.
Yeah.
How you going?
That's my new "when will the plague be over" noise. Do you like it?
Yeah.
I think it suits the kind of emotional morass that we're dealing with right now. It's all going away. It's not new, but we don't know when it's going to stop. And it hasn't knowing that it's going to end hasn't magically made everything easier. So we find ourselves perpetually in a situation with the tonality of,
Well, things have gotten so intense here that Sweden of all countries, has blocked off the border to Norwegians. That's when you know things are getting bad.
What, when they won't let Norwegians into Sweden?
They won't let Norwegians in.
Wouldn't they be more concerned about letting Sweden, like the herring plague town itself, wouldn't they be more concerned about letting them out?
Oh, the concerns goes both ways. Borders just it's militarized now. There's army reservists all up and down the border.
Oh well, isn't that fun?
Yeah.
Isn't it nice to have friendly neighbors?
Yeah, the Swedes. But look, we are going to be continuing with a new segment, overrated, underrated, appropriately rated. But this time, James is going to ask the question. So to give you a quick summary.
Yes. Now, to give you a quick summary, you didn't say what any of these things had to be about. You just said basically, prepare 10 nouns. So, you know, I love looking for a loophole.
Yeah.
When this starts, bear in mind, this was your idea.
Yeah. Okay. So the game is, James will say a thing, a noun, and I'll say whether it is overrated, underrated, or appropriately rated. And if I want, I'll expand on it. And if James wants, I can expand. Or it can just be a one-word answer. So we'll see how it goes. This is completely. I have no idea what James is going to ask, and frankly,
well, this is you've missed something. This is a direct parallel of our last episode, or we decided to do one that's essentially in two parts.
Mm-hmm.
You did this silly laundry list of things that are good or bad,
yeah, and
I presented you with a developed idea that I'd had in me head.
Yeah.
And now we're doing it the other way around.
Yeah,
where
part two.
I have a laundry list of silliness, and you, from the depths of your big alleged brain, have brought me a good, complicated idea that's worth chewing over and not wasting our listeners' time.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Good man.
Let's jump into it.
Good man.
Okay.
Item number 1. Foot fetishes.
Appropriately rated. If people are into it, all power to them.
I think there's something very it's kind of almost innocent and sweet. I mean, it's not putting someone in a burlap sack and beating them with a length of chain. It's feet.
Yeah.
I'm kind of charmed by the idea that feet make people so incredibly happy.
Good for them.
This is not something that I think about. It just seems to pop up on the internet all the time because people have these persistent jokes about celebrities. So like it's with that Ben Shapiro guy. There's this long-running joke that's been going for years about how he's into feet, and I've never really thought about it before a week or two ago. Oh, some chattering dick from the television. It doesn't matter.
Okay, go on.
The Franco-Prussian Alliance of 1821.
No idea. I'm not good with history. Appropriately rated. Bad. I don't know.
That's terrible.
You have to do stuff I actually know about, James. Next one.
Gingers.
Gingers. Underrated. I've met a lot of good gingers.
I think so too. Yeah, definitely underrated.
We worked with a great ginger back in our time, PhD. Tim Althred. Good old Tim.
Oh,
as you affectionately called him, Ginger Tim.
Ginger Tim.
Yeah.
See, he was great. Good researcher, nice guy, bit weird. Skin the color of a piece of A4 paper and hair the color of a fire engine.
I've never met a nasty or surly redhead. They're all friendly people. Underrated.
Definitely. And to think people grow up and I never understood it at primary school. And there's people like, oh, there is a ginger kid in the corner. Let us throw rocks at him. Why? Yeah, where did that even come from?
It's very strange.
Okay. Here's one you will have an opinion on. Apple products.
Appropriately rated, then in some cases not as good as people say they are, and in other cases people shit on them for no reason.
Well, I hope you've updated yours because they have a massive security hole right now.
I did.
Everyone who's listening to this should be running 14.4.
Yeah, I did update mine.
Good, yeah, and then you can go and reflect on how your precious fuck toys can never be hacked, and you're completely immune to every bad thing that could ever possibly happen. Basically, you're all wrong. Okay, yeah. Next one, Daniel, the Borgia Pope.
The what Pope?
Oh, Jesus
mate!
Christ.
What's all this history?
It's talking to a plank of plywood. This is just things that I think about. You asked me for a list of things. You didn't say a list of sensible things. I sat down and looked at the ceiling and thought, what 10 things would I like your opinion on? And now you're making a bollocks on it by not knowing stuff.
What you'd think you'd use the theme of last week as a guide, but no.
Oh, James, I thought you'd do something boring and predictable, just like me.
Silly me. All right, next one.
Okay. Fully unblinded open peer review.
Underrated. Let's.
Okay.
Let's try it and see what happens. Like, people instantly, I think, go towards doing the safe thing, which is how we're always doing it. When it comes to changing how we do things, I think we always have to think about the benefits and the things that can go wrong. And in this, I think the benefits would outweigh things that can go wrong. So this idea is underrated, I think.
Yeah, I didn't say I wouldn't become sensible at some point, Dan. Maybe I could only think of 5 good ones and I wanted to wind you up with 5 bad ones. I would go underrated as well, very, very simply, because a lot of journals have great big archives of reviews where you have a reasonably good historical control that you could change and see what happens. I would love to see a sentiment analysis on open reviews looking for whether or not they were cursory, whether or not they were dickish, whether or not they garnered appropriate responses, and how much of the paper proportionally was changed over time. I would love to see that studied on a large scale. And even to that end, I don't think anyone's done that in the way I hope I'm expressing correctly.
Are you talking about let's compare open with non-open and see what the sentiment differences are?
Well, yes, but also within the same journal. That's the best part.
Yeah.
It's already got a pre-existing archive. So you'd need someone who had access to it to be able to do the work. But I think I'd love to see that. I think that. Do you know what you were asking about LinkedIn last week?
Yeah.
One of the things that has struck me just playing around with it, which I do a lot more now than I used to, because people write to me on it all the time. People add me to networks. People add me to little groups of whatever, right? I've noticed how well behaved everyone is, simply because it is an ostensibly professional network. I go through. I can't even find a harsh word a lot of the time.
It's all very positive.
I mean, I see some criticism. It's more the fact that I am seen in this particular light with my real name in this format. No one's called Johnny the Squid Fucker 49, right? Everyone is representing themselves and their place of work in a professional environment. And I wonder if open review would be more like that than people realize.
that's kind of what we've always argued, that when it's out in the open, and I mean, anecdotally, if you were to run that, I know there's a few journals that are doing, they randomize reviews towards being open and non-open. I don't remember the journals that are doing that, but there you could easily do a comparison of the sentiment or the quality. I mean, quality is hard to determine. Oh, the word count. Do people who do open reviews, do they spend more time on their reviews and do lengthier reviews? But also just the general sentiment. You can compare these two things, and I would be so surprised if there wasn't a difference between the two things. So surprised. Once you know this thing is open, especially if your name is on it, then there'd be a massive difference in how the quality of the review and also how civil the reviews are. I think not a day goes past where someone's not posting a screenshot of some like dickish review. Like
I saw one yesterday on Facebook.
Okay.
Which I am forced for a variety of reasons to keep and rarely look at, but it's still occasionally vaguely interesting. Yeah, not since yesterday have I seen one of those. So I guess I agree with you.
Chris Jackson did a good thread of these ones a few days ago. Former guest Chris Jackson. I'll post a link to that in the show notes.
Okay, didn't see it, but yeah.
Geology, man. They tell ya.
Do they get about it?
They get about it. Angry people in geology.
Yes, because you might say it's because, Dan, all their problems are buried. Fuck you, it was funnier than that. All right, next one. Wearable physiological measurement devices.
Overrated. I got sent a link from my father-in-law there was a big write-up in the national tabloid here in Norway about a wrist device that could predict depression. Yeah.
How does it do that? Does it have a microfluidics chip that absorbs tears?
Yeah.
How does that everything so fucking ridiculous? Sorry, I mean, you could say, for instance, that psychomotor activity was correlated with depression, but predict it?
Yeah, so I mean, this idea that like certain sort of activities or movements can predict whether an episode is. So, and look, it looked like have you seen those there's those wristbands that have like magnets in them that are meant to like realign your chi or something. It kind of reminded.
Yes, I just make the assumption that I've seen everything in this space, and that most of it. Look, as someone who works for a wearable company, I would also say overrated. It's about 85. Look, there's a small subset of them that have absolutely no chance, and everyone just rolls their eyes at and doesn't tell the people who are making them that the physiological net that they're trying to cast, it just has no mesh.
Well, let's put it this way.
Hang on, Captain Pants. The main problem with them, Dan, is that they're solving problems that people don't have. Because something has presented itself as an idea, legitimate or otherwise. But even if legitimate, an idea has presented itself. An engineering solution is possible. Therefore, purely by some kind of digital magic, that makes the data collected, 1, meaningful, 2, accurate, and 3, capable of providing actionable information and able to make decisions about something. I'd say they're a lot more successful as scientific devices than they are as medical and consumer devices.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to get at, in that a lot of these devices, they can measure the thing they purport to measure, such as activity, such as heart rate. You know, you don't need a super expensive device to get a decent enough accuracy, but it's the next step of this will predict this thing or your readiness or stuff like that. That's where things fall over for these devices. So it's sort of it's kind of hiding behind this curtain of objectivity. This measures your heart rate. I'm like, sure, yeah, it does. I'm sure it does. But then it's the next step where things get a bit fuzzy. So yeah, overrated.
Yeah.
So overrated.
Yeah, and speaking personally, the amount of work that you have to do to get it to the point where it's measuring it accurately. Maybe people feel entitled to the fact that it successfully solves a problem after they've got it to work in the first place.
Yeah.
Reality is rarely that convenient.
Yeah.
Okay. What about fishing?
I think it is underrated. I've done it a few
Mm,
times in my life and I've really enjoyed it. I only ever do it when I'm it's never like, oh, let's go fishing today. It's I'm on holidays or I'm somewhere and it's
mm.
nice. I'm very bad at it, but it's very nice. Done it on a boat, done it from the shore, all sorts of places. I should probably do it more here in Norway. Everyone loves fishing here. Um, yeah,
Extraordinarily restful.
yeah,
And every
exactly.
now and again, there's also a fish. I mean, I don't know. It's like a combination of a nap and a barbecue with it's potentially associated with some protein.
It's yeah. There.
It's I miss it.
Did you do it back in Australia?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Where?
enough. Oh, around and about. Sometimes on a boat on the south coast, and every now and then from a beach. And I never had my own rig. It's just sort of know people, and it's it's an excuse to drink beer near water and occasionally harass wildlife. I mean, what's not to
What
like?
more could you want? Yeah, no, I was thinking a few days ago. Yeah, just fishing would be great.
Okay.
I don't have the gear, and there's a few spots close-ish to where I am where you can sort of get a fish every now and then. But yeah, up in the wilderness, it's good times fishing up there.
Nice. Okay. fMRI.
um, it is appropriately rated. The downside of fMRI is that be, I think the sentiment is changing, but it's this idea that because you spent a lot of money on it, the results must be important. Yeah. Even if the results aren't valid or your experimental design sucks, because you spent money on it, it must be good. That's not necessarily true. A lot of people shit on fMRI for various reasons.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things, like, like any sort of methodology done properly, it's great. But if you sort of overstretch what you're trying to do, then it's bad. But it's especially bad because it's fMRI. It's got to be a good.
I don't think that's the right nomenclature. Done properly. You can think done in the service of a question it can properly address.
Yeah.
Right.
So I
Which
think
is not like you turned it on the right way and you did the right kind of fucking analysis. It's are you asking a question which makes sense to be asked by this vascular McFuck in context? The answer is often no.
I think, but I think EEG is underrated. Yeah.
No, of course you do.
EEG is underrated because it's sort of overshadowed a bit by fMRI, but the temporal resolution that you get from EEG, you can do some really cool stuff. So yeah, appropriately rated.
Spoken like a man who can't afford an fMRI.
Okay. Okay.
Last one. You ready?
I'm ready.
Me.
Oh man.
Say it. Say it. Say it.
I'll also go with appropriately rated because
Oh, God damn it. What do you have to do to get a drink in this town? All right, go on.
I would say that's a curveball.
Well, they were supposed to be all curveballs. We'd start with foot fetishes.
I think that people think they know you, but they don't. Yeah. There is Twitter James. You know what?
Psychoanalytic.
I miss Facebook James. Facebook James had a different vibe. You don't post anymore, which is fine. And I
rarely even check it. Yesterday was an anomaly.
Yeah, no, this is like years ago. I liked Facebook James, but he's not there anymore. But
I think there were more cat photos.
Cat photos. I just remember arguing with people. It was great.
Oh, was it more unpleasant?
It was just shit posting. Really, it was fantastic.
Oh. Okay. Well, I've become a lot nicer.
Yeah, I think so.
Not really.
So I think appropriately rated because it's the persona. People sort of have an idea of who you are from your sort of public thing, but knowing you a bit more, you sort of know the other side. Yeah. Some of it's grumpy, stroppy. That's okay. That's who you are.
Fucking hope so at this point. If I haven't managed to alienate you by now, I've just accepted by now the fact that I can't alienate you.
Yeah, I think you're appropriately rated, and but you were referred to as a science god last week in this article. From this, there was this some weird diet app thing which I see pumped on Facebook a lot, and they were talking.
Oh yeah, someone sent me that.
It was me.
Yes. Was it you?
It was me.
No, someone who wasn't you sent it to me as well.
So essentially,
it doesn't matter. Sorry, go on.
So essentially, with this app, they were promoting the whole if you put your food on a small dinner plate, you'll eat less. But then they said, well, this has since been disproven by the work and the associated work has been disproven by the science gods. But still, we think it works as part of their promotion.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was empirically tested. It was empirically tested so badly that the work itself was removed from the scientific record. The researcher resigned in disgrace from a named position as a full professor at a very large Ivy League university. But despite that, we quite like it. So we think we'll keep recommending it.
It was such a weird promotion ad.
See, there's something that is the exact idea of, there's a way in which the answer to that question is not very interesting. And there's another way in which, if you did a tremendous amount of work, you could actually approach how that works. The first thing that I think of in terms of that is serving mechanics. If you study that with a buffet, then it's a very unrealistic portrait of how most normal people eat.
Buffet people just go mad.
Well, yes, of course. But if you go mad with a smaller plate, perhaps you'll go less mad. You see, you could accept that. But then what happens when you make a certain amount of food that you have every intention of eating? I know how much I'm going to eat before I cook. Sometimes I cook for 2 nights. Sometimes I cook for 5 nights. Sometimes I go, it's Tuesday, I will cook dinner. I make an estimation, then I eat that food. All you're doing is wearing out my feet if I'm going to be using a smaller plate.
Yeah.
Likewise, if you're serving things that are family style, there's so many ways to split this up. What happens when you have, like I said, a family style dish and everyone has a small plate, and you eat things one piece at a time?
Depends how much there is in the first place.
Well, you see, this is the thing. There's no one mechanic for eating food.
Yeah.
We haven't even gotten into, does this only apply to main meals? Will I snack less if I, if I get my cheese doodles out of the cupboard? For instance, I found out they were a thing in America. I found the name amusing. Do I put them on a small plate? Or do I hold them in my hand? I do what I usually do, rip the packet open and then backfill my head into the kitchen, leave the packet and walk away. Efficiency in all things, Daniel, even the consumption of cheese doodles. I'm describing a very, it's messy. Interfaces like that are messy human things. And the idea that you've got to nail down a simple principle it's how cranks think. This is the food mechanic. It's like sociology is just something that happens to other people. There's no everything, especially within sort of the practical nutrition and exercise and health and fitness and everything like that. Everyone wants an answer. Everyone wants a way, and there are no ways. There are only principles and your ways. And you have things like this, and it's just there's something very limited about the mindset of the whole enterprise. I know you were using this as an example to mock how someone inadvertently referred to me as a deity, but we probably should do something thoughtful from time to time, shouldn't we?
Let's do it.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what we will do. We'll take a break, and then you're going to tell me about your amazing idea.
So here is my idea, or something I've been thinking about over the past couple of weeks. Let's talk about research funding, but not in the way that you think.
Oh dear. Okay.
When funders make funding conditional on a thing, researchers are going to do it. Yeah. Researchers are already doing this. There are reporting guidelines. You might need to do a report once a year. You might need to write up a version of your results for popular consumption or whatever. There are a set of requirements that funders do, and scientists accept that. That's just what you do. It's part of it. And I think this very idea that researchers are going to do what funders ask them to do is really underappreciated when it comes to reforms and changing the way that we do things. I love the concept of grassroots reforms, people doing it, PhD students. I think this is fantastic. And it should go from, I think it should go from both ways, from the bottom and also from the top. And the top isn't the universities. The top is the funders, because they're the ones that hold the money. And speaking of the funders, they obviously want the best use of their money. And one thing I want to talk about is this idea of sharing data. And I think I have a solution. Okay. So we've spoken about this issue of researchers not sharing data. Great example today. Great blog post from Joe Hilgard, about his battles for trying to get data or trying to get some papers that had some very, very sketchy results, inconsistent data, essentially retracted or looked at very carefully. We'll post a link there. It's a very, very, very good example. You've had so many examples in your own work about difficulties getting data as well. One thing that we've raised in a past episode is this idea of a university having sort of an independent data keeper, which seems, I think some universities are doing this, where essentially when you do a research project, the data goes there. And then if someone actually says, okay, I want to request this data, it is this independent body that actually determines whether this is a legitimate request. But at the same time, one thing that we've learned is that universities take care of their own. I mean, to go back to that, to Joe's story, when the university was kind of looking through and doing an investigation, their conclusion was, oh yeah, our boy, the professor's just pretty shit at stats, but what are you going to do? And that was essentially the conclusion of the investigation. And that's what we're going to get with a lot of universities. So I don't think necessarily letting universities have control of the data is going to be the solution here. So what I propose, and this is actually built on the back of how we do research locally. Locally, when I do most of my data and most of my analysis is done on the university cluster. Yeah, this is good because it means it's secure, and it means from the university side, it's very easy to audit who's doing access and who's doing the analysis. But what if funders actually sent up their own central server where all the data that related to projects that they fund are stored, and all the analysis is also done on this server? Yeah. And the benefit here is, by default, when you publish a study, your data automatically becomes open. Yeah. If you have a good reason that your data shouldn't be open for privacy reasons whatsoever, then you can go synthetic. If that won't work, then you can make it private, but then it's the funder who decides what a legitimate request is. If you want to see the data, reviewers should automatically get access to this, like just no questions asked. Yeah. But if you're looking at a paper that's already been published and you want access to the data, then you make a request to the funder, and the funder is going to go, yeah, sure, this is legitimate. We paid for this data collection. Here is the data. So I think this would solve a lot of problems. Firstly, it would solve this idea of forcing having open data, and it'd help for reviewing. But I think secondly as well, it would also help with having an audit trail of all analyses, because you can see who's logging in and who's doing the analysis. So even if you didn't pre-register your study, you can't say we predicted this if your open audit actually said, no, this is the 99th time that you've actually tried doing this analysis. And that's something that you can check. As for cost, I think that funders are already paying for this. Yeah. when you write your grants, you're already putting a budget line paying for access to these servers to store your data and analyze it. So kind of like APCs, instead of actually the funders paying for you to pay for that, they just pay for it themselves. And in the long run, that will be cheaper. But the beauty of all this is that people won't complain. If the funder says, we want to do this, we believe that our data should be open because we're paying for it. And if you're taking our money, this is what you're going to do. People aren't going to go, I'm not going to apply. I'm not going to apply for the money. People are still going to apply for the money and do this. That is my idea. Funded, supported data storage and analysis. James Heathers, your thoughts?
Yeah, I have. First of all, that's not a terrible idea. The structure of it to begin with, my first thought is, why would hundreds or thousands of individual funding bodies want to start coming up with their own systems to be able to do this? It's all going to be cloud-based anyway. They're going to be hiring AWS servers or some shit. So why would they not simply pay for the upkeep elsewhere? Why would they not just hire their own service to do the maintenance and warehousing, etc.? Because look, what you're proposing is a really very large, complicated digital repository. And to put in things like version control and access control that is like fluid. So, I mean, you need to get reviewers a certain kind of access. Maybe journal editors have different kind of access. You have different persistent rules for the access going forwards. It's not a trivial thing to do at all. It's quite a substantial thing to do. That, and it's going to come with a series of complications. So something like this, you're proposing what in a lot of contexts would be a whole company. Now, how that stretches across private and public funding bodies is going to be really difficult. So an ecosystem where there were major services that we used to do this, and individual funding bodies engaged people who were already experts to be able to do it, feels a little bit more viable than, let's just get it set up. Fuck off to the shops and buy a server.
Look, I'm not saying so it's easy, but
yes, but you're saying it's easy. But I mean, whether or not something's doable is, ideas are fine. Everything is execution, though, and the center of this idea, I think, is resting on an observation that we've previously talked about, which is the maximum amount of leverage in a world where there is endless competition for any source of funding. The maximum amount of leverage belongs to the people who hand out the money. And what you're proposing is potentially taking money out of their budgets to hand the money out in order that the objects themselves should be preserved. So you'd want a very good... I think what you'd want to do, the way that you'd sell that to someone, is the persistent value of having this open as a public good or a public object. And you'd want to strongly promote the idea that other people could reanalyze, inspect, or use it to other ends. Because to get the maximum amount of value, I mean, you'd also need a whole bunch of interoperability between potentially different services. So, I mean, it could make, done properly, it could make aggregating different data between different experiments in different areas that are measuring the same kinds of outcomes. It could make that very straightforward. There's just an astonishing amount of work that would go into putting in features like that.
Yeah.
So I wonder if the collective appetite of people who run these organizations, be they public or private funded, I wonder of just how committed they are to the idea that what they have is valuable in the first place. I mean, grants in their essence, in most schemes, the way that they're awarded, the amounts that they are, there's no appreciable change in that over a very long period of time, and certainly a lot of decline over the last 20 years. We often complain that academic objects are not modern digital objects. Well, the way that grants are assessed and handed out is also obviously, I mean, if the whole idea of throw away the entire ability to evaluate anything past a certain point and put it to a lottery, if we're having a serious conversation about whether a fucking dice is going to make a better decision than a group of appropriate experts, then, this is, I mean, people who are in various industry roles have complained to me many times. It's like, they pay all this money, generate all this intellectual property, and then nothing happens with it. Things that could be massively valuable for the people who are generating them, which are usually governments, right? But they're giving it away in terms of, we're like, well, it's a public asset. And I go, well, you could continue the development yourself and make the public asset a better thing. Or, there's various commercialization possibilities within that. Depends on what it is, of course. It's not the worst idea you've ever had. I particularly like the idea of everything suddenly becoming normal because the person who has all the money says so. And a lot of the time that's how normality starts. The initial problems feel like they'd be around, like, how are you going to get this shit to run? Of a myriad of computational environments are you going to use to be able to generate something where A turns into B and B is presented and A is measured?
Yeah, that's where it gets a bit tricky. At least how things work locally. It's all tricky. It's an enormous idea. You have flung the entire bakery into the sky. But essentially,
many flying pies.
You can run virtual machines. So if you have a Windows machine or a Linux machine, then you could run that virtual machine on the server and do essentially whatever you need to do.
Oh, were you just handing out computing power like it's free?
No, but what I'm saying is individual universities are pulling this off. Individual universities are doing this. They have a secure place where they can store data and do analysis. If an individual university can do this, then in principle you can scale up. Scaling up you'd save money by scaling up. So it's possible on a mid-ish scale. We know it's possible.
Different people would save different amounts of money. Not everything is a macro decision. Like some universities have private budgets that are the same as some small countries. You're proposing something that's fiercely international and crosses a lot of, because we want this to be some kind of blanket expectation. We're actually going to implement it. I'll tell you how I do this to begin with. I would take one of these special interest grant schemes. Let's say it's an underappreciated disease.
Yep.
Like ALS or something.
Sure.
And you have a kind of you see this happen every now and again in different countries in different contexts. A tranche of money is released by someone that looks at a specific topic, and people who work in that topic are invited to apply. Sometimes these things can be a bit more risky, blue sky, whatever the fuck it's called these days. You're invited to speculate. You're invited to take a few more risks. It's all a little bit more exciting a lot of the time, and you offer that on the basis of we're going to start a really great body of knowledge on this one thing. And any tomfool person can get access to this. And you don't want to pick something that's got private health information or anything sensitive, the location of the largest redwood in California. It's open data. I want to climb it. I think you need to, any idea that starts really big a lot of the time, unless the implementation is also sufficiently big, is doomed. You want a test case.
I like that idea.
Right.
Starting with a smaller, like one smaller scheme or one unique grant call.
Yeah. One disease.
Yeah.
It's something that if senior researchers in a grant body particularly interested in one specific thing, like glioblastoma or something serious, but not a huge area of not a wide area of study. I wonder what it would mean, because also it takes years for things like this to, not only the planning of it to come to fruition, but the ability to actually execute the idea and then have the benefits seen on the other side. I feel like we've all collectively lost the ability, especially over the last couple of years, to think long term. Everyone's burned out on immediacy, and it's running right out of the environment of, oh shit, what happened today?
Yeah.
The plague certainly hasn't helped. Neither is, you can name your political situation of choice in response to that, but also, previous to it. It's hard. It's hard to sell people on your visionary ideas, I feel, these days. I think there's more attention than ever before, and it all seems to be going to everything that happened 20 minutes ago. Everyone is incredibly present, and it's often a huge pain in the hole. So, I wish you great luck with your 10-year plan, Dan. I could find it extremely challenging.
So on that, do you think long-term reform efforts are doomed?
No, I don't.
Why?
Because there are still countries and work environments and civil services that have the appetite for thinking about how the future is approached. It's not dead. It's just like sicker than it was. And it's often very hard to make clear cases about things like this. This is very hard. So, you could be proposing spending, 8-9-figure sums on being able to get some implementation of this on some broad basis. The money has to come from somewhere. In a lot of places, it probably has to come from a specific act of parliament, which, it's not someone changing a line item with what they do. It's a big money decision, and I'm perpetually confused by how science is seen in the public eye in a lot of contexts. Like why it has the profile that it does. Why it isn't perceived as like something that's a reasonable idea. And it feels like every inconsistency, every mistake, and of course all the lies, disinformation, and bullshit that surround scientific associated topics is one thing. But every time there's some appreciable success in some domain, people go, well, of course we have that because we have progress. It's never, thank you, empiricism, the job. I appreciate your attention to detail in these matters. It's nice that we're not all dying. It's nice that the water isn't full of parasites and, I do wonder why we don't all have better PR. I wonder if that's the center of where you're going to get all of your money. Are you able to do something like this?
What is this, how science in general doesn't have better PR?
Yeah. It shouldn't be. I mean, regardless of what you think of it in the face of other broader ideas about how humanity and reality are constructed, it shouldn't be a side note in budget negotiations. It shouldn't be something that's there as well, something that's occasionally worth a single special interest article. It's not a topic du jour the way so many other things are. And so much of that is dumb shit. Like people arguing about deficits. Mother of God, they don't even know what they are or where they come from or what they do. They're out there yelling about them. Australia was fierce for this. Deficits. I've heard they're bad. They must be. I don't know. I feel like I've taken your reasonably intriguing idea and then turned this somewhat bleak, Daniel. Do you have any more details to add to it?
No, that's it. I was mainly inspired.
Right for asking, I suppose.
Mainly inspired by the sort of work that we're doing here locally at University of Oslo. In that all our stuff is on this secure server. I think it's a good idea, and it's it's on par. It's on par with my my
on you with your foot fetish.
No, hey, quite about that. It's on par. It's on par with my funders should also start a journal. Which happened. ERC listened to me.
Oh, right. I should have known it was you.
Yeah, ERC listened to me, and they've started their own journal for a lot of the same arguments. But we are going to wrap up for this episode. Thanks again for listening, and we'll be back again soon with a new episode of Everything Hurts. So yeah.